Mr. Lyle, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Fan. Great. It's great when a plan.
About that, David. Sorry for the technical difficulties. And apologize that you have to join us on the phone, but we do have the presentation up and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lyle. I appreciate it very much. Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight here on our I'm sorry, I had a little background noise going. Can you still hear me, John? I'm sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight to talk about the terrible flooding this region experienced on September the 10th. As you probably know, we're holding this meeting virtually to minimize health risks because of COVID-19, but also because this format is more convenient for customers, is what we have found thus far, especially for those that have mobility issues, young children, or just prefer to do it by telephone or online. So we're trying to accommodate everyone by having our town hall online this evening. But actually, before I get started this evening, we have some special guests I would like to introduce them there. Hopefully they are on the phone with us. We have Deputy Mayor Lucinda Babers, that is in charge of infrastructure. And with her tonight, she has Karima Woods, the Commissioner for the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking. And we also have Clint Osborne with us from HSEMA. And we also have Councilmember McDuffie with us, and also Dolly Turner from Councilmember Todd's office, and she is the Chief of Staff in his office. We will allow those to speak that would want to, but I'd like to start out with, because he has another engagement this evening, but I'd like to start out with Councilmember McDuffie. And before you get started, if you're on the phone, Councilmember McDuffie, I want to thank you for the partnership and thank you for your support, and also for the support of your stakeholders and constituents. Councilmember McDuffie, if you have anything you'd like to say.
And David, I don't see the council member yet, okay. But I'll tell you, I will let you know if any of our special guests are able to join us as presenters. They may be listening in or maybe joining in progress. But what I would recommend you go ahead with the presentation, and if they join us, then we can add them in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lyle. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of tonight, I want to take just a few minutes to talk about two important announcements that I have tonight here from myself and DC Water. The first is that I've decided that DC Water is going to expand our backflow valve reimbursement program so that it covers every single home within the most seriously impacted neighborhoods in the district. And we will later on talk a little bit more about that backflow valve as well, that will help us in the future regarding storms and also the sewer backflows that we had recently during this storm. You know, with this, that means that DC Water will pay the cost, which can run upwards of $6,000 per home, to install these valuable plumbing devices into homes, so that the future floods are much less likely to have the force of sewage come through, and also stormwater back into the basement of our residents in the district. Secondly, I want to announce tonight that DC Water has decided to create a brand new fund to help customers who are struggling with remediation costs, like drying out basements or removing moldy drywall. That program will pay homeowners up to $5,000 towards the cost of drying out their basements, which, you know, we hope that it will allow most people to address the most pressing damage that they have in their home, and also those in the district as well. So those are two fantastic programs, $6,000 towards the backflow device, and then another $5,000 towards drying out of those basements. We will be sharing more details about both of these programs in the coming days. Now, let me say something here. I think that's, from myself, and it's a little personal and from my heart to everyone out there that is listening and has gone through these terrible storms. I want to express my sincere sympathy for every single district resident who experienced flooding last week. While there was no loss of life, there was damage that comes with a financial toll that's impacting many of you and others across the city from all backgrounds. It's inconvenient and a lot of work, and also a new uncertain stress that nobody needs, especially during these trying times. So I want to tell you that I am sorry that each and every one of you had to go through this. And of course, floods can destroy irreplaceable items, from scrapbooks and photos and sentimental toys and other things that we have in our homes that make our homes special to each and every one of us. Myself, I've been through 3 floods in various homes that I've lived in. So I truly understand what our district residents are faced with. And for all those reasons, let me be clear. I understand that many people are hurting, and I want you to know that you are in my thoughts and in my prayers, and in the thoughts and prayers of the DC Water Team Blue employees as well. Now, I do want to spend a minute putting this flood into context. As many of you know, some flooding during unusually heavy rainstorms is a common occurrence in our city, and even other communities as well. In Old Town, just across the river, flooding is so common that businesses and homes keep sandbags on their front stoops all year long. Sadly, perhaps because of the climate change, heavy weather events seem to be happening more often, and the district is bordered by 2 rivers and then split by Rock Creek. So there is a lot of water in our community. Last week, the system that we have here in the district, the storm drains that make up the big portion of our sewer network, largely functioned as they were supposed to. There was no underlying issue with construction or malfunction or some error on the part of DC Water that caused this occurrence. Instead, it was caused primarily by historically high rainfall, more than 2.2 inches in just 75 minutes. 2.2 inches in 75 minutes. That much water created flooding all over the region. No stormwater can account for such a heavy downpour during such a compressed time. And the DC water system prevented a much more widespread and destructive flooding event that could have happened in the district. We don't see flooding as a normal occurrence. Let me say that again. We at DC Water do not see flooding as a normal occurrence. And we are doing everything in our powers to reduce the likelihood of floods and the severity of floods. Right now, we are making strong progress in both those fronts by improving our infrastructure with investment and reliability, and by continuing our programs on the Clean Rivers Initiative. We have been steadily improving the capacity of the system for more than a decade with the tunnel program, including the First Street Tunnel we built 5 years ago after a terrible 2012 flood in Bloomingdale. Let me conclude by thanking you for taking time to participate in tonight's meeting. And I want to assure you that we will be working quickly to implement both of our new programs that I announced earlier this evening, the backflow valve reimbursement program and the new fund to cover partial flood damage expenses. Tonight is the beginning of our conversation, not the end of it. And you can count on us at DC Water to do everything in our power to assist our customers. What I'd like to do now is to turn over the presentation, the remainder of our presentation, and I will come back at the end for Q&A. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Keisha Powell. She is our COO, our Chief Operating Officer. Ms. Powell?
Thank you, GM Gaddis, for that introduction. And I join you in expressing the concern and keeping everyone in my thoughts and prayers. I know firsthand from experience how impactful having a sewer backup or flood can be. And so as we have approached as an operations team, the assessment of this event, it was from the standpoint of making sure that we could understand exactly what happened here so that we could convey that with understanding, and also making sure that we are taking the time to look at any other mitigation measures that we can take for the future. By way of background, I just wanted to share what our services include. DC Water provides drinking water distribution in the District of Columbia, wastewater collection and treatment, stormwater collection and treatment, and operation of the Blue Plains Wastewater Treatment Plant, where the average daily capacity at the plant is 384 million gallons per day. However, during wet weather events, such as the storm event on last Thursday, we can process a peak capacity of up to 780 million gallons per day, which is a combination of flow that receives complete treatment and flow diverted to the wet weather pump station. Next. I go to the next. I'm not saying. So DC Water's service area contributes flow to the Blue Plains Wastewater Treatment Plant, or the service area which contributes flow to the Blue Plains Wastewater Treatment Plant is 725 square miles. Within the District of Columbia, roughly 1/3 of the district's sewer system is a combined sewer system, which is the area shaded in brown, meaning both wastewater and stormwater flow in the same pipe when it rains. Much of the system that exists today was built by the early 1900s and designed with the capability of handling a 2-year storm, meaning a storm you would expect to see every 2 years. Now, the next slide shows is just a graphic that we have on our website, which is meant to visually show how a combined sewer system functions. Again, during wet weather events, which is on the right of the left-hand graphic, you see our stormwater and wastewater flowing in the same pipe to the Blue Plains Wastewater Treatment Plant. On the right side is a graphic of a blow-up of the combined sewer system in green, and the yellow dots show the locations of combined sewer overflows. So within our system, in addition to the 603 miles of combined sewers, the system that serves the district is comprised of the following assets: 16 stormwater pumping stations, 9 wastewater pumping stations, 50,000 manholes, 25,000 catch basins, and 9 inflatable dams. Immediately following last Thursday's event, our team in operations and engineering began an assessment of the system's performance and our response to the flash flood event. Without a doubt, I can tell you that our crews responded in force, tending to our critical infrastructure assets and a system that was surcharged by the flash flood. I will give you an overview of that assessment, but first I wanted to frame the discussion with an evaluation of the flash flood event itself to provide some context. So on September 10th, we had an extreme rainfall event which began after 12 p.m. with a peak rainfall occurring between 1 and 2:30 p.m. The most extreme rainfall occurred in Northeast DC, much of the drainage area north of Florida Avenue, with the most significant rainfall during the event, feeds the areas that were most impacted with surface flooding and backups. We included in this map the location of 4 rain gauges in the district. So from left to right, Rock Creek Pumping Station, we have a gauge. We have a gauge at Bryant Street, and we have a gauge gauges at Brentwood Reservoir and at our Main Street pumping station. So when you go to the next slide, we drilled down on the rainfall itself. When you look at the rainfall across the duration of the September 10th event, and this is referring to the table at the top, you'll see that within 1 hour, we received roughly the same amount of rain at the Bryant Street and Brentwood rain gauges as we did in 48 hours for the storm related to Hurricane Isaias, which occurred this summer. And we wanted to provide this context because when we went out on Saturday with Mr. Gaddis and the mayor, we heard from many residents there the question of why is this happening now? Why this storm? In the first 5 minutes of the September 10th storm near Bryant Street, it was akin to a 100-year storm event, followed by the intensity of a 10 to 25-year storm. So again, that's a storm event that you would expect to see every 100 years or every 10 to 25 years. So a very intense storm in a short period of time. The next slide shows, and the tables following that provide the rainfall data for Hurricane Isaias and Hurricane Laura, which was August 28th through the 29th. And then we provided a bit more context on the next slide, which shows the 4 flood events from in 2012, which impacted the Bloomingdale neighborhood, and then more recent floods in 2017. This context is important for 2 reasons. First, it helps us understand why, even when our system was working to its maximum capacity, it just could not accommodate this event. This is a sheer sign of climate change induced short duration, high intensity rainfall. And this will hopefully help us understand and convey what led to the impact to our communities, which we understand is frustrating. We understand that ultimately a number of homes in several communities were impacted by this flash flood event. This is a map of the calls we received, and we are still working to capture all of the impacted properties. When we attended the community meeting this past Saturday, as I said, we heard the concerns and the questions, and that's what we're attempting to answer here. And this is just some of the pictures that we captured that were sent to us or that we pulled from social media. Next. So now getting into our response to the storm. When we looked at assessing the system, we wanted to make sure that there were no impacts to our system or our process that would have caused or been the cause of the backups or the surface flooding. The combined sewer pump stations, the main pump station, the O Street pump station, Poplar Point, Potomac, and Rock Creek all serve the combined sewer area. In the first column, we've listed the firm capacity of those pump stations. That's the capacity of the pump stations with 1 pump out of service. That's the capacity that we have to meet. And you'll see in the next column that at each of those pump stations, we were pumping over that capacity. So we were moving as much flow as possible. Then moving on to the stormwater pump stations, which typically serve our bridge underpasses. The capacity of the pump stations was exceeded by the intensity of the rain at many locations. And we noted some issues there, such as Dean Avenue, where we had a creek in the area overflow its banks, Eastern Avenue, the pumping operation was disrupted due to a power outage, but that was would have impacted surface flooding. We're drilling down on that issue that would not have caused basement backups. And then Portland Street, we had to send our jet truck out to clear debris. The First Street Tunnel, we did hear from residents why did the First Street Tunnel not help? Well, it actually did. The First Street Tunnel, which was designed to provide 9 million gallons of storage when it was placed in operation, did help to mitigate the issue. It prevented 9 million gallons of sewage in homes and on the street. This tunnel filled to capacity and overflowed as it was designed to. There's a temporary pumping station at the end of the tunnel where we did see the system relieve itself from that point. And that was, again, that helped to mitigate, while it provided or caused some surface flooding, it did help to mitigate the issue of backups. Next. The Anacostia River Tunnel System, which as it's constructed, provides about 124 million gallons of capacity. This tunnel filled to capacity in about 35 minutes, and this is a 23-foot inside diameter, so this is larger than metro tunnels, about 7 miles long, from RFK Stadium down to Blue Plains. That 7-mile stretch filled to capacity in about 35 minutes. The tunnel was emptied to our wet weather treatment facility as designed. We were able to capture close to 200 million gallons of volume, though we did have a little over 100 million gallons overflow from the tunnel system. But again, the tunnel operated as it was designed to, and then overflowed to the river. We looked at the data that you see to the right to just look at the performance of the tunnel dewatering system, and we noticed the blip there. We drilled down where you see that dip in the graph, which is circled, and we were able to confirm that it was a meter fault that caused that blip. However, the pumps continued to operate at maximum capacity. Now down to our Blue Plains wastewater treatment plant. The flow receiving complete treatment actually exceeded the permitted capacity for permitted peak capacity of 555 million gallons per day in the first 4 hours. And our wet weather treatment facility, which is designed to provide 225 million gallons of treatment, performed as it was designed at the 225 million gallons per day. So in our preliminary findings, and we intend to do additional assessment, including the team is working on a hydraulic model to make sure that we really understand how this flow impacted the system in every way. Our preliminary findings show that the September 10th rainfall exceeded the design capacity of the sewer system. Systems are designed for based on historical data, and it's designed at a point in time. Anytime you have storms that exceed the design capacity of the system, you could potentially have this issue. And that's why we're mitigating with our Clean Rivers program, which Carlton Ray will talk about in a moment. The storm peak frequencies observed in the district, as I said earlier, 100-year frequency in the first 5 minutes, and 10 to 25 years through the remainder of the storm. When compared to Hurricane Isaias and Hurricane Laura, roughly the same amount of rain as Isaias, but more rain than Laura. But both storms occurred over a longer period of time and was much less intense. So the system was able to accommodate the less intense rain. And then our tunnels, the Anacostia, First Street, and Blue Plains, as well as the McMillan storage, reached maximum capacity in the first half hour of the storm, and the system remained surcharged. We had a mix of sewer backup concerns as well as surface flooding. But all in all, the system performed per our compliance requirements. Now, moving to immediate and short-term mitigation measures, as GM Gaddis said, DC Water has recognized that there are significant hardships experienced because of the unexpected flooding event, impacts of COVID-19 on our community, heightened public health concerns, and a significant number of impacted homes. Therefore, DC Water is committing $1.5 million for cleanup relief for those who need immediate relief and have been able to dewater and have not been able to dewater their properties. So this would cover dewatering, cleaning, and sanitizing with a per property limit of $5,000. DC Water will pay the company directly for these services. And for more information, we've included the website there for impacted residents to get additional information. As Mr. Gaddis also said, we're expanding the backwater valve program. A backwater valve is essentially a backflow prevention device that is installed on your sewer lateral. It's designed to stop flow from coming back from the sewer and entering the basement, so flow only goes in one direction. We caution that you don't want to use wipes because sometimes that can get caught up on the flap and cause an issue. So you want to make sure that you're only flushing things that are meant to be flushed, and making sure that backwater valve is maintained. And with that, I will turn it over to Carlton Ray to talk about long-term mitigation measures under our Clean Rivers program.
Thank you, Ms. Powell, and thank you for attending tonight. As also as expressed by Mr. Gaddis and Ms. Powell, is that we also feel very, very, very sorry for folks who had gotten flooding from this terrible storm. So what is the design capacity of this system, and from basically addressing the long-term approach here to resolving this issue that's been around since the late 1800s? When the Bloomingdale flooding occurred back in 2012, we had four storms, three in July and one in September to make four. And those were somewhere between a 5 and a 10-year storm event return frequency, somewhere in that level. The one we had on September 10th was larger, somewhere between a 10-year and a 25-year, probably around a 15 to 20-year storm, but basically in that parameters. But basically, when we had an after-action study that we completed in Bloomingdale, along with the district government as well, we determined that the existing sewers in that neighborhood were relatively small, basically had a carrying capacity of 2-year storm. Most of these were built by the federal government. Again, the sewers along Rhode Island Avenue and all the areas north of Rhode Island, a lot of them were built by the federal government, including the conveyance system. I'll talk about that to the Anacostia River. That was also constructed by the federal government. So after the flooding that we had, we basically came up with an interim and implement short and medium term solutions. if y'all can remember up in the Bloomingdale, LaDroit Park area, there was some old sand filters up in McMillan Reservoir. We retrofitted one of those to provide about approximately 3 million gallons of storage, stormwater storage, that would have flowed down into the through those neighborhoods. We also constructed the First Street Tunnel, like Ms. Powell said, to provide total approximately 9 to 10 million gallons of storage. That basically provided us a little more latitude to be able to take higher frequency storms, such as a 5 to 7 year storm. Ultimately, we want to get to a 15-year storm, which is our design current design standard for our sewer system. And to do that required a big project, a northeast boundary tunnel. And frankly, there's lots of projects have been thought about over the years, but have done smaller projects trying to basically nibble on the edges. But it took something like this to basically get the water away from these areas down to the Anacostia and down to ultimately down to Blue Plains. So let's talk about the northeast boundary tunnel on the next slide, please. Before we do that, again, this slide in the map in the upper right-hand corner is basically that yellow line follows the Florida Avenue. That's the old sewer that was constructed in 1894 and expanded in 1900, early 1900s. But basically, that's the main was the main overflow place to get the water away from houses, or at least get the water away from the area down to the Anacostia. It's known as the northeast boundary sewer. In the upper portion of that is approximately a 10-foot diameter, and the lower portion is it gets larger to 23-foot. But this is basically, again, Florida Avenue runs, where that yellow line runs underneath Florida Avenue. It used to be known as Boundary Road. And everything to the north of Boundary Road was once upon a time, and when this was built, pastures and farm fields and low wetlands and so forth. So basically, this was constructed a long time before future development occurred in that general area. Even then, it was determined it was probably the capacity was too low for to serve in that area. That was pre-development. Again, this was built by the federal government and turned over to the district during Home Rule in 1973. Again, like I said, many studies looked at this, trying to figure out how to mitigate. Going back to the 1950s, probably every 5 to 10, 15 years, you'll see a study that came out how to do it. And we're going to show you how we're going to help resolve a large amount of flooding there. Again, before I get in there, is these sewers, that yellow line I was just showing you, where it says deficient sewer, the one on the right-hand side, that's the old Anacostia or northeast boundary sewer that was built in 1894. The areas to the north of that, again, are those sewers up there are undersized that serve those areas. And so you can see the chronic flooding that we've known about for years, have occurred for years. The red dot there is Mount Olivet on the right-hand side. On up is Rhode Island Avenue Metro stop, and then over at 4th Street and right on down Rhode Island. So a number of those are basically, the sewers that serve that area are undersized. When they were proposed to be constructed, it was proposed by the Board of Engineers at the time, back in the late 1800s, that we would basically expand those sewers in the early 1900s, expand those sewers up there in the yellow area as well as in the pink area, is separated sewers. Basically, they didn't listen to their Federal Board of Engineers, federal government did, and basically constructed combined sewers in that particular area, both in the yellow area as well as in the pink area. That's the Piney Branch area that flows into the Rock Creek area. Both those have been recommended to be separated, but in fact they were basically expanded as as a combined sewer system. You can see all the blue lines there. There were deficient sewers, undersized sewers. And again, those were all turned over to us in 1973 during Home Rule. Go ahead. This is how we're going to solve a large amount of flooding up in that area. Ms. Powell showed you a location map of a number of flooding locations. It takes extending the tunnel that, again, Ms. Powell says 23 feet, larger than the diameter of the tunnel, is larger than the metro tunnels once you get back in the tubes. That extends approximately 5 miles, 5.5 miles. You can see the brown line there. That first red area is Mount Olivet area. We're working right now. A number of those pictures you saw back in the front, flooding areas, also had orange cones in there because that's where the flood is, and that's where we're building shafts to drop the flow down approximately 100 to 160 feet to the tunnel that we're constructing to get rid of that stormwater and sewage down to ultimately take it down to Blue Plains to get it properly treated. So if you look off to the lower left-hand side, there's a schematic there that shows the tunnel, the 23-foot tunnel that we're constructing as we speak, as well as the shaft that we're basically will be constructing at each of these sites, or have constructed each of these sites, again, to drop the sewage down to the bottom of the shaft and then connect it with what we call an adit over to the tunnel and convey it away from folks' houses. And then if we continue on up to Rhode Island Avenue Metro, remember we saw the flooding and the FEMS did an amazing job of getting people out of there safely. But folks got flooded in there. It's been happening for a number of years. When we get a good large size storm, we're going to resolve that. So again, those pictures you saw, we've basically dropped down to the tunnel and conveyed away from that area. 4th Street, you can see the shaft there at 4th Street. Again, the Edgewood group in the Bryan Street is just to the north of that shaft, about a block and a half. That neighborhood flows down into that area. Again, we pick up the sewer line at that location and then drop that sewage down into the tunnel and get it away from that area. We continue to the west there. You can see the 1st Street tunnel where we make the connection. Again, all that Ms. Powell said, we have about 9-10 million gallons of storage. That would have ended up in a lot of folks' homes, or in a lot deeper down at T Street and Thomas Street, because it was basically stored in the tunnel, and as opposed to just allowing it to go down the street. But again, we've got a shaft at that location we're constructing, and we'll drop the sewage at that location into the tunnel, convey it. Continues on to the west at Florida Avenue. We'll also resolve the issues and greatly reduce the flooding prospect of flooding there, and down at 6th and R. This is a big investment by all the ratepayers across the district. It's a $580 million project. It's the biggest project DC Water has ever constructed. We're currently up at Rhode Island Avenue Metro stop with the tunnel boring machine. We've made that turn recently, and basically we're mining to the southwest, and ultimately we'll bring out the Christopher Allen tunnel boring machine out of the shaft at 6th and R. And currently we're about approximately 60% complete on that project. Our goal is to have it, Our goal is to have it completed by 2023 and have the consent decree deadline by 2 years. Thank you. Go ahead. So basically, with the long-term approach here, it's basically we're going to significantly mitigate the frequency, magnitude, and duration of the sewer flooding and basement backups in the northeast boundary drainage area and surrounding areas. We're also greatly enhance the water quality in the Anacostia. Anything that's in sewage ends up in the Anacostia River. We built the first It used to end up in the Anacostia. We built that first phase. As Ms. Powell said, we've caught since approximately 2.5 years in service, approximately over almost nearly 9 billion, not million, but billion gallons of sewage and over 4,000 tons of trash for this first phase. We're going to even do better with this next phase, Northeast Boundary. And again, you can see by building this, we'll continue to reduce the magnitude of storms that potentially causes flooding. Even with the Northeast Boundary Tunnel in service, these real large storms, there will still be some flooding, but be greatly reduced. And so it's again a good project that basically addresses long-standing drainage problems and flooding problems in this area. Okay, go ahead. I think back to you, Ms. Powell.
Thank you, Carlton. Before we turn it over for questions, I just want to mention some next steps. We will we're in the process of preparing an after-action report, but tomorrow morning we'll be giving a briefing to our EQ and Ops Committee for the DC Water Board of Directors. Once we prepare the after-action report, we'll review that with the Mayor's Office and HCEMA. And I want to recognize my colleague who I know is on the line, Mr. Clint Osborne, who I believe the mayor appointed to work with us on this effort. We'll further investigate impacted communities to identify additional mitigation measures, as we said, and that may include CCTV and other ways of investigating the system. Certainly along Nicholson Street, which is a separate sewered area, we have to do some additional investigation to understand why there were a number of backups there, for instance. Implementing the expanded backwater valve program, I believe so far we've received interest from about 300 residents to sign up for a backwater valve. We'll continue the construction of the Northeast Boundary Tunnel, and we will be evaluating the resiliency of our system, what resiliency measures we can put in place in response to climate change. And we'll be working with our colleagues at DOEE to contribute to the surface water model that they're leading there. And I just want to mention my colleague Jeff Seltzer, who I believe is also on the line. Additional resources we had on the last slide. We've included the link, which has we have a page dedicated to information on the September 10th flooding event. So the link is there. It's dcwater.com/September10flooding. And then to learn more about sewer backups and the claims process, go to dcwater.com/sewer-backup. Our general customer service number is 202-354-3600. And we also have customers that are non-English speaking can also call in as well. And with that, I will turn it over to John to lead our Q&A session.
Okay, thank you very much. And we do have quite a few questions, both on the phone and in our chat. And I will just say up front that I imagine quite a few of the questions are going to be fairly similar. So we may not answer every single individual question, but hopefully we will provide responses that will address your question, even if we're not responding directly to it. We are going to start with a question that came in from one of our callers, from Andy Shaheen, who says he lives in a condo that's on 3rd Street Northwest that backs up every year from April through September. He has been dealing with this, he says, since 2012. And his question is the Clean Rivers project completed? And what's going to happen in terms of damages and reimbursement? And we'll throw that to, we have Mr. Gaddis, Ms. Powell, and Carlton Ray as well on the phone with us.
So John, I think that we allow Carlton to talk about the Clean Rivers project and its impact on that neighborhood, if Carlton does know exactly where it is. So
Sure. Yeah. So basically, again, this is in the Bloomingdale area, LaDroit Park area. Like I said, we're bringing the northeast boundary tunnel down from the northeast to the southwest, terminating 6th and R at 1st Street. Right now, we go into a pump station, a temporary pump station that provides limited capacity, but better carrying capacity than what it was back in 2012. It's gotten up to a 5 to 7 year storm. We want to carry it on and expand it greater to at least a 15-year storm, where it has carrying capacity for a 15-year storm. And so we'll make a connection between that 1st Street tunnel and the northeast boundary tunnel. So basically a drop of water will flow 13 miles down to Blue Plains. And so that will be completed in 2023. I know that seems like a long time, but it's a really heck of an investment that basically the ratepayers have put up to address your long-term flooding problems.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question about the backwater valve.
The claims.
Oh, the claims portion of it, which was what's going to happen in terms of damages and reimbursement.
So in terms of for damages or reimbursements, we're directing folks to go to our website to look up the information to file a claim.
Okay. So here's a similar question, but it is also related to the backwater valve rebate program, and it is asking, this is Mr. Bormet asking, what are the new eligibilities for the backwater valve program? Is the 1600 block of 4th Street Northwest eligible? We've had multiple flooding events on the south end of this block. Essentially, I think the question has probably come up from a number of people, is whether or not their block or their neighborhood might be included. We've already spoken about Edgewood and Riggs Park.
So what our engineering team is doing is reviewing all of the requests for the backwater valve program. So the best thing to do is to call in and express your interest in having participating in the program so that we can check the eligibility. Mr. Gaddis has considered expanding it beyond those two communities. However, we have to make sure that it meets the eligibility criteria, including being in the combined sewer area.
So resident named Tiffany, who lives on 3rd Street Northeast in the Edgewood neighborhood, believes that nearby construction will create more flooding for her. And maybe this is a question for Mr. Ray, but that is a question, whether construction impacts the capacity of the system.
A couple different aspects to that question. One thing, today's stormwater regulations that are implemented by the district have greatly reduced the amount of runoff that's coming off those sites. Though, because stormwater that's coming off those sites is reduced, thus the amount of water that's going into our sewer, the combined sewer system, is also reduced. So that's very, very helpful. Obviously, when you have more units that are connected to it, obviously we look at that fairly closely. Our folks look at it very closely. Again, that area around the 4th Street, Rhode Island Avenue, Foreman Mills area, all that will be served by the new tunnel system. But again, the amount of water that's coming off that site is greatly reduced because the stormwater regs have been implemented. That's been utilized both for the combined sewer area as well as in the separated areas.
We have a couple questions asking about the claims process. The first is, I filed a claim with DC Water for sewage damage in my basement. When should I expect to hear back? And the other is, how quickly will claims be processed? And who should I turn in the estimate of damages? We may not be able to answer that question right now, but we can certainly get back to them. And the information about our claims process and the contact information is on our website at dcwater.com/claims. And we will certainly have somebody get back to you as soon as possible. And here's a question about another area. What is the remedy for Nanny Helen Burroughs and Eastern Avenue? It's had flooding for a long time, and the pump station has failed. I know, Keisha, you have not been here long enough to be familiar with that particular location, and I don't think it's part of the Clean Rivers project. Carlton, are you familiar with that area?
Well, obviously it's a separated area that basically there's a physical sanitary sewer and a physical storm sewer. We've had problems in that area, and again, we need to continue to investigate and determine and resolve the resolution of those issues that are causing problems to it. We can obviously provide us your name. We can follow up with you to discuss about that.
Okay, great. That our chat function, and Carlton, maybe you could respond to them in that as well, or
yes.
We'll do that later. So this is a question from Mr. Levy about the maintenance of the sewer system, and his question is, when was the last time maintenance was done on the sewage system before Thursday, September 10th?
I would say that in general, every day our crews are out doing some level of maintenance. There are some things that are prescribed that we have to do in our permit, such as cleaning catch basins with a certain frequency. So catch basins in the combined sewer area, for instance, have to be cleaned twice a year. And we're trying to ramp up our cleaning and inspections of the sewer system so that we can do that more frequently. But as we are going through this assessment process, that's one of the things that we'll be looking at is how we improve our preventive maintenance activities.
Okay, next question comes from a caller who asked, what are the health implications of this flooding incident, and what is the guidance from the district government? Mr. Gaddis or Keisha, I assume one of you may want to take that on.
Well, obviously.
Go ahead, Keisha. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the first thing is, we would tell individuals not to come in contact with the water or sewage, and to stay away, and then to call and get someone to dewater and remove, and then of course clean and then sanitize the areas. And if you could have that done by professionals, but if you're doing it yourself, make sure that you're wearing the proper PPE, gloves, and masks and those sort of things. But you know, we would advise people not to come in contact with the sewer water or any water that has come back into your home, and to call a professional to come out and assess the situation and let them take care of it is what we would recommend.
Catherine Schwartz, who's online, joining us online tonight, asked, does DC Water run any hazard analysis to understand what happens in storms like the one last week? Why were we so unprepared for what happened? What plans are in place to prevent future storms causing the same damage to the city? She asked her question at 6:38 before we got into the bulk of the presentation, but maybe good still to address her question.
Well, I would first say, and then I'll allow Ms. Powell to join in on this and give her side. But I just wanted to first say it was not that we were not prepared. We were prepared. I think Ms. Powell's presentation laid it out very well, that the system that we have and the design of such that it did function, and she showed the data, and that's probably what you're alluding to, John, in her presentation. But Ms. Powell, if you'd like to speak further on that.
Just from the standpoint of doing the hazard analysis, I think the team is always, and risk assessments. We have a number of recent assessments where we're looking at our critical infrastructure and evaluating what work we need to do. I think we have a very comprehensive system in place that and key performance indicators in place that are help us understand when we have impacts to critical infrastructure so that we can prioritize repairs. We have a focus on preventive maintenance, certainly of critical infrastructure, to make sure that we keep it operational. So our teams are, even during through this pandemic, have had a significant focus on making sure that we're maintaining critical infrastructure so that we can continue to carry out our mission.
We have two questions, one on the phone, one online. They're kind of similar. They're about stormwater. One question is, my question is about how the district plans to deal with stormwater and potentially doing infrastructure work to improve the handling of stormwater, not sewage water backing up. My street, the 1300 block of Newton Northeast, has flooded almost every time it rains because there are no storm drains or lines on the street. And then on the phone, a resident of Edgewood was at the walkthrough, Mr. Gaddis, that you did and spoke to you. She says directly about the lack of drainage that is in their area. She said that I think maybe showed you the drains, and that there are only 2 drains, which is insufficient for the amount of stormwater. And I think this question leads to sort of maybe an explanation of the different roles between the Department of Transportation and DC Water, and who's responsible for what.
So as I said during the presentation, part of our next steps is to do an assessment of the areas where we saw flooding, a more detailed assessment, so that we can identify if there are any other mitigation measures aside from the Northeast Boundary Tunnel, which we talk about, which Carlton talked about. But we do recognize that there's other opportunities. One thing we did not touch on was green infrastructure. We did not talk about, the assessment that needs to happen. And I did say that we would be working with our partners at DOEE on developing a surface water model to look at the impact of stormwater management in the district, aside from just the combined sewage and waste and sanitary. So that is something that we are planning to do moving forward, but definitely as a result of collecting information on those impacted areas, we want to make sure that we do a deeper dive assessment on those communities to see what the causes may be. We do believe that in one case, there's some stormwater drains that are actually connected to the sanitary sewer. So we have to understand how we would go about mitigating that issue if that's the case.
So we have a question online about the backwater valve rebate program. The person asking the question is asking, how come my home wasn't eligible for that rebate 2 years ago? And also, if we could explain how this is a historic flood when the sewer backups happen once or multiple times a day. I will just say about that second question that the amount of rainfall that we saw on September 10th was a record for that date. Not that it's the most rain we have ever seen. We've certainly had other storms, but and the first question, and maybe Carlton may be the best one to answer this, is the original program was backwater valve program, a rebate program was directed at a specific neighborhood that had seen very significant flooding. And Carlton, do you want to speak about the experience in Bloomingdale?
Sure. Again, we talked about it before, but basically in 2012, we had this terrible incidents of four storms that landed a lot of rain over these neighborhoods, and so we came up with again a short-term, medium, and long-term solution there. And one of the short-term solution was to implement the backwater valve program, and again, it was successful there. And again, like Mr. Gass has offered, we're going to expand that program based upon the success of that, and I think it'll be well received by folks. But again, it just started out just with those. We've never done it before until 2012, and again, we had a pretty good success story with that. And now we're expanding it.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next question is, what exactly does dewatering, cleaning, and sanitizing include? Does it include removal and replacement of the ruined materials that absorbed backwater?
So dewatering would be basically removing or getting any standing water from the area. And the cleaning and sanitizing would, and the services will be able to better explain the extent of the scope, but essentially making sure, as Mr. Gaddis said, that it's basically drying out the area and making sure that there is no mold or health concern. The service does not include replacement of items. If you have items that have been lost as a result of the backup, those you would need, in order to address that, you would need to file a claim.
Okay, we had a similar question from Rosetta on the phone, who was asking how to forward her receipts for payment. And I would believe the answer to that would be to reach out to our claims department.
That's right. We have a person who Tanya De Leon, who works with this process. So the information is on the website, where you can call to get more information on the steps to take. However, you will need to have your receipts and provide the information as required in order to file the claim.
Okay, we have a question on the phone from a business owner located at the intersection of 4th and Rhode Island Avenue. This person says they're a proud business owner. They've been there and active in the community since 2003, and says, I have lost count of the number of floods that my business has endured over the years. And I have heard on the call options that DC Water is considering for residential relief. but what is in place for business owners? And Mr. Gaddis, I know you've been out to that area, meeting with businesses, with Councilmember McDuffie, and maybe you can speak to some of the other assistance that's available.
Yes. So you're exactly right, Mr. Lyle. You know, first of all, the businesses will have being offered the same exact thing as the residential customers are as well. So, but we would first, again, I can't help but emphasize, you know, file a claim with your insurance company and see if you do have coverage and if you have the rider, especially those business owners, to file a claim with their insurance company. And then if there's no success there, you can file a claim with us at DC Water, and we are offering up the same sort of program where we will dewater, you know, clean and then sanitize that Ms. Powell laid out just a minute ago.
Okay. I'm looking through our questions. One question on the phone. Ken Moore, this is a Bloomingdale, some resident who lives on Florida Avenue in Bloomingdale. She's concerned about common street flooding on the sidewalk, and not necessarily talking about the type of flooding we saw last week, and asking what the process might be to add more catch basins. And also, can we install larger sewer pipes?
So this is the northeast boundary area. We've got, again, we have a shaft that's going in right there at that intersection. Again, to drop sewage into it. We're also putting in catch basins in that area. It would be good if we can get your address and basically just come out and take a look at your particular site. Just to make sure that we've got it covered. But again, we've done analysis. We've worked hard trying to locate the flooding, and worked with neighbors over the years, listening to them about where these shafts should go. And again, there's one right there that we're constructing right now. That again, I know it's a little ways away. It's 2023, December 2023, but it will greatly mitigate that type of issue. We can also take a look at again, if there's might be localized flooding or something like that, or localized issue that you might having it more frequently as well.
We are getting a little feedback from you, and I don't know if you have
excuse me.
I'm sorry. Device on or not, but it's been sort of coming and going that we're getting a little bit of feedback. So we have a question online asking, and the person asking the question says, "Thank you for hosting this meeting this evening and for the program announcements. I already have a backflow preventer. What else can be done in the short term to ensure the storm flood drain water will not back up from outside into our home? This is the 4th time in 14 months in Trinidad. We need serious attention to this particular storm drain." I'm not sure if they're asking about storm drains potentially being clogged or just the capacity of the system.
Sure. So we want to make sure that we understand the surface flooding, where we receive surface flooding issues as well as the backups. And you know, while we are doing work on under the Clean Rivers program, we're also working with our counterparts in DOEE. I mentioned the modeling effort that will get underway, and this may be an early preview, but the goal of the project is to make sure that we understand where interior flooding, either from surface water flooding or basement backups, might occur. And so I think that work is planned for the future. But in the meantime, as we do our assessment of this event, it will be helpful for us to know. And many people did not call in for this event or when they were impacted or were not able to get through. And we understand that due to the call volume. But please make sure we have your address, because we do want to make sure that we include that in our deeper dive assessment of what is happening, so that we can understand what would mitigate those issues.
And that's a good segue just to say, if there are follow-up questions from this evening, I'll give you an email address. So if we've asked for your address, please reach out to us and send us an email at communications@dcwater.com. communications@dcwater.com. Mr. Levy asked a question: what was the rain volume of other storms in August and September? Seemed very similar, and I think you touched on this in the presentation.
Yes, the rainfall, the total rainfall across those events were very similar. I think for Isaias, it was close to 3 inches of rain, as was the September 10th rain event. The difference being that the September 10th rain event was a very high intensity rainstorm in a very short period of time, whereas the Isaias rainfall that we received in the district was roughly over a 48-hour period.
I think our original backwater valve rebate program paid 90% of the up to 90% of the cost, up to $6,000. Ms. Powell, have we figured out if that's the way we're going to administer new applicants for this program as we expand it, or are we going to pay the whole thing? That's a question that's being asked.
Can I interject here? We started out 90% and then went to 100%. So it's gone. Our goal would be to pay for 100% for these areas that Ms. Powell and Mr. Gaddis have talked about.
Great, thank you. So I think the answer is we pay the full amount up to $6,000.
That's correct.
Next question: is there any effort to count how many residents were impacted by the flooding last week? I heard a lot about flooding in Brentwood, Ward 5, but nothing about the impacts in other neighborhoods. In Ward 4, we and a lot of our neighbors were impacted, but I have not seen anything in the way of how many households were impacted. I hope that this is measured so the issue can be better understood. And you did show a map, I think, that showed the locations at least.
Right. If you called in, that contributed to the map that was created in the presentation. And we are still collecting information on the properties that were impacted, and certainly the communities that were impacted outside of Ward 5. And I have to mention that our partners at HCMA also did a canvassing event where they were trying to help ascertain what properties were impacted as a result of the flood as well. So any addresses that we receive through the chat, if you're leaving your address and letting us know where you are, we will add that data to our map, because we do want a good understanding of where the impacts were.
Question: can landlords seek reimbursement for lost rental income from this flood? Our tenant has chosen, understandably, not to renew his basement apartment lease. With COVID, replacing him could take months. I assume this is a question about claims, the claims process.
I think we would have to consider that question and follow up with the person that has asked.
Yeah.
But yes, I do think that it's in the realm of the claims process.
Yes, that is correct. The individual that would need file a claim, and then it would be determined if it met the criteria for payment or not.
This is a good question, and I think it's important, especially when we showed the slide that showed our service area and how it encompasses quite a bit of the suburbs. How is the district working with Maryland and Virginia to make sure they are helping us mitigate the pressure on our system, as the map seems to show that we are at the end of the line, so to speak, for stormwater?
Carlton, do you want to speak to?
Sure. Be glad to. Again, we've worked hard with our brethren and their folks over in Maryland, as the folks who are sending sewage to us in Maryland as well as Virginia. We have an intermunicipal agreement. We've had it for a number of years. That basically regulates the amount of sewage and water that can send to us through our into our system from those areas. Basically, we track that very closely. They did a very good job of not sending us more than what they're allotted to. And again, we have board members from those areas who are on our board, and it's really it's been a well-functioning board of directors over the years because of that. Basically, that we work very closely with both the folks over in Maryland who send us flow, as well as the folks in Virginia. Also, we work through COG, Council on Governments, and again, we have a number of different opportunities of working together on a number of different issues that potentially affect water quality here in the district and in adjacent areas. So we've had a very, very good relationship with the folks in those two areas.
So we have a resident on the phone who asked, she lives on Burbank Street Southeast, calling because she says that she was denied a backwater valve previously, and is, I think, wondering if she might be eligible now. And I think the answer would be, as part of this program, to please go ahead and apply for the program anew.
That's correct.
So yes, please reapply. Again, the program originally that we offered was offered after the floods in 2012 in the Bloomingdale neighborhood, after they suffered 4 storms in a row that summer. But now Mr. Gaddis and Ms. Powell have been working to expand that program. Carlton, another question you might want to address is from Andrew, who lives on Bryant Street. I'm a little dubious that DC Water's construction on 4th Street Northeast is not at fault for the sewage blowup on Edgewood. Have you taken that into account? And if so, can you account for the very quick drop of the overflow? It should have drained slowly, but it did not.
Again, this is a known flooding area. It's been known for a large number of years, long number of years, and basically that's why we're building the shaft there at the intersection of 4th and Rhode Island to address that. We'll pick up that and divert the sewage from the sewer pipe that serves the Bryant Street area and divert that into the tunnel system. It was, like Ms. Powell said, we had it's a relatively fast moving storm. And so so once it moves on out, basically flow and it starts receding. There are certain areas that will potentially recede quicker than others, but basically it does act as a, it's trying to get out. And again, if the rain's not lasting like like other storm events that potentially longer, then it will stay around for longer. That said, it was a really fast-moving storm. Storm came through, dumped a tremendous amount of rain in a short period of time. Like John Lyle said, it was kind of it was most in a particular day on that specific day, September 10th. Again. Our sewer system worked properly. It's just a very, very large storm in a short period of time.
Online, question is, if I have a backflow valve installed, but it flooded anyway through the toilets and the shower drains, is there any way for me to know whether just rainwater flooded my basement, or do I need to be worried about sewer water still? And I'm not sure why that would occur if you actually have a valve installed.
Yeah, so sometimes if you have a downspout or several downspouts connected to that same sewer line that's upstream of the backwater valve, that can cause the water that's coming off your roof and maybe off the back of your property into that sewer line. That obviously you need to redirect that water away from the sewer line, keep that from occurring, the surface water occurring. Also, we found over the years that besides water getting in through the sewer line, it also comes in through the window wells. We encourage you to take a look at your window wells, make sure the debris and any leaves or anything might be kept from clogging that line and possibly causing water to come through the window wells if you have clear water in your area. Yeah.
Karen, who's a Shaw resident, she's on the phone. She lives on French Street. Knowing that development and increased climate are leading to the runoff issue, are there any thoughts about increasing green spaces and more permeable pavement as ways to address these issues?
Well, like I said, the DC stormwater regulations also apply to the combined sewer area as well. And so any of the large developments or new developments that are going in all have to have green type facilities, green roofs, that type of thing, trying to limit the amount of stormwater running off their property as well as permeable pavement. DC Water has also constructed a number of green infrastructure in the Piney Branch area to also create Mother Nature in an urban environment. We encourage green infrastructure to be built, and again, if you follow up with us, there are lots of ways you can enhance your property as well to help facilitate green infrastructure being constructed in your neighborhood.
Next question from online. Why doesn't DC Water proactively clear debris? The sewers are always full of garbage, and I think they mean the storm drains. And we do have a program to clean those.
Yes, as I shared, we do clean the catch basins on a schedule, and we in the combined sewer area, we're cleaning them more frequently, but we will be assessing, as I said, how to make improvements to our routine and preventive maintenance programs. But anytime there is you see a clogged catch basin, please call it in to our customer service center, because we create service request work orders for those issues to be addressed.
This next question may really be related to different sewer infrastructure in different parts of the city. And the capacity of those systems. On July 8th, 2019 in DC, it rained over 3.3 inches in an hour, and we experienced no sewer backup at that time. So why did it happen this time when we had 2.88 inches of rain in roughly the same time frame? And we don't know exactly where this particular person lives. So.
Right. We would have to know where you are so that we could see what the impacts may have been, or why there was a backup as a result of that storm, and also take a look at that storm. We pulled events where we knew there was some significant flooding to make a comparison. As we move forward and continue to do our assessment of this storm event, in preparation of our after action report and doing some additional modeling, we will be looking at other storm events for comparison. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Can you explain the outfalls that normally handle overflows? How did they operate? Carlton?
So those pipes were built in the late 1800s, and basically, again, when the sewer system gets too full and we can't convey it down to Blue Plains to get properly treated, these physical pipes are, again, were constructed in the late 1800s, early 1900s, but primarily the 1800s, allow raw or combined sewage to overflow into the Anacostia, into the Potomac, and into Rock Creek. Majority of it had been going into the Anacostia, and that's been greatly reduced with this first phase of the project. But those are basically physical pipes, overflow pipes, that when the system gets too high, it allows that combined sewage to overflow. And when we first started the program, is somewhere between 75 to 80 times a year that we would have overflows that go into, on an average year, go into the Anacostia. We're going to reduce that with this next phase down to 2 times a year from where we were. So again, the tunnel system will do a great job on addressing that. Again, that's an average hydrological year.
And just one correction, if you have a clogged catch basin or any other maintenance issue, it should be called into our command center, not what's technically called our call center. And the number is 202-612-3400. That information's on the website as well.
Here's a question, a good one. The backwater valve is on my property. Does it belong to me, or are you responsible to maintain it? We're putting it in on, I mean, the backwater valve is going to be on my property. Will DC Water be responsible for maintaining it, or does it belong to that person?
We look to the homeowner to be responsible for maintaining the backwater valve, simply because they can if they discharge or put stuff down the pipe that's not designed to go down into the sewer system, that can basically cause problems for the valve to be closed. We've talked about wipes, they're sometimes advertised as flushable wipes, which they're not flushable wipes. They need to go into the garbage can. Those type of things would potentially cause the backwater valve to fail. We want to make sure it stays working in working conditions. So therefore, we look for the homeowner to be responsible for them.
I see the Clean Rivers project as a long-term solution. What about the short-term solution? If this happens again in the short term, what happens? And I think we're trying to address that with some of the measures we've talked about.
That's correct. And certainly, as Carlton said, he expressed his excitement about being able to expand the backwater valve program. That adds a level of protection. And as I shared, we are working through our assessment of this event to understand if there's any other mitigation measures we can take sooner, because we do understand that it will take time to complete the northeast boundary tunnel.
We have several questions that are very similar and asking about the rebate, the assistance for cleanup and dewatering. And the questions are generally that what if they have already had the work done, already had a company come and clean up the water from their basement and sanitize it, are they eligible for the assistance that we announced tonight?
So, sorry.
Mr. Lyle, I was going to say that we will take all of that under consideration. So we would ask individuals to present their receipts if they have any before and after pictures. That would be fantastic. So if they can document this as that they did make the cleanup and all that, all those sort of things, and then we will have our third-party administrator come out, take a look, and consider paying individuals or reimbursing them for the work that they did. I didn't mean to cut you off, Ms. Powell.
You said it better than I.
Thank you.
I think we answered one question related to this earlier, but there are questions about additional questions about the impact of new development. And I don't know if there's anything to add to what we said to that already, but that is a common question about development. And in fact, and Carlton can correct me if I'm wrong, some of the development that took place beyond Boundary Road, which was Florida Avenue, I believe in the late 1800s, that was partly why at the time that sewer infrastructure was undersized pretty early on. But I don't know if there's anything to add to that.
I don't think so.
Okay. And for the backwater valve rebate program, what options are available for residents who cannot afford to pay for the valve up front? This is from Lucinda, who's joining us online.
So the new program, one of the decisions that we made in this new program, or the new program that we're offering, is that there will be, we're not expecting the customer to pay up front. We are not reimbursing the customer. We are looking to pay the contractor directly. We know that that type of program does cause an issue and inhibits a home from being able to get that backwater valve installed, having to come out of their pocket for whatever the amount. But we're really encouraging homeowners to get this, to apply for the backwater valve and allow us to assess and then get that installed. We think that would be helpful to everyone. As Ms. Powell stated earlier, Mr. Ray was very, very excited when we came up with this program, because it does help DC Water as well, and also the residents. So this is a win-win for everyone.
If this was a 10 to 25-year storm event and the northeast boundary tunnel will be designed for a 15-year storm, would it have been able to stop this flooding? It's a good question.
So yeah, it's a great question. And again, I tried to show that on a graph. It basically solves up to 15-year storm events, but also greatly reduces and mitigates larger storms, such as the one we experienced as well. So what happens, it relieves the existing system from surcharging up to larger storms, and thus it helps facilitate getting the water out from around the flooding areas. There is some folks will continue to have some flooding based upon sewers that are too small in their neighborhoods. Again, we could continue to work on that, but majority of the flooding that we experienced, particularly in the northeast boundary area toward RFK Stadium, a lot of that area will be greatly mitigated. The flooding will be mitigated, excuse me.
A sinkhole has appeared in our front yard after the storm and basement flooding on Thursday. Who can I talk to about this? Thank you.
So please share your address with us, and we can make sure that our investigation team comes out to have a look and investigate the issue and provide additional guidance on what needs to be done.
And this is another good question from Christian Benani. Why are all the deficient sewers located east of the park where predominantly lower income and people of color reside in DC? Stump the band, and Ms. Powell is new to the city.
Okay, so again, we have undersized sewers and lots of parts of the district that were built by the federal government. And again, there were a large number of sewers that have been undersized. So we are addressing these again with the tremendous program that ratepayers are supporting to resolve that. Other areas continue. We need to look at those areas, understand what the problems are, and come up with solutions to resolve those issues. So Ms. Powell talked about we're doing an after action program looking at each of these complaints. We want to hear about it. If you have some more information you can provide us, we're looking forward to getting that. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, and I think, Colin, related to what you were talking about, we are going to be building the Potomac River Tunnel to address overflow problems on that side in Northwest as well, and that's an important project as well. So the sewers, as you said, there are undersized sewers throughout the city. So there's a question about and we do have this information on our website at dcwater.com/September 10 flooding. We have put information up there about the two companies that we are contracting with to do the cleanup work. And I think the comment from Andy Fleming is that those companies obviously were very busy last week, but we are working on them to make sure that they're able to assist if I've got that right as well. Yeah. And we do have Matt Brown on the phone as well. Matt, do you want to take that? He's our Chief Financial Officer.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Brown. I'm the CFO for DC Water. Our procurement office has been in conversations with those two companies today, and we have worked with them for capacity in order to handle the work that's coming. So we anticipate that they will be able to handle that. Again, the two companies, the information is listed on our website, and the phone numbers are listed there. And they can take calls starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Great. Dina asked, if I heard correctly, the 2012 event had roughly the same amount of rain as this event, though spread over several days. Why are you classifying these storms 100-year events when they have clearly happened twice in 8 years? Just need to explain a little bit more about what you said.
Sure. And I think that's the point that we're trying to drive home is that while they may be categorized based on the rainfall intensity as a 100-year storm, which should technically only happen once every 100 years, we're seeing more larger storms more often. And that is just, I think, the sign of climate change. Climate change induced short duration, high intensity storms. And there was actually a report published, I believe, by EPA, and we showed the link to it and a little caption of it in the presentation that specifically talked about climate change in the district. I am just coming from Atlanta, where we talked about the impacts of climate change quite a bit, and I had an earlier discussion about it Now, when we're getting rain, we're getting a lot more of it. When we don't get rains, we have periods of droughts. At least that's the way it was in Atlanta. So we were building solutions for both ends of the spectrum. And that, I think many places are experiencing this issue where we're just seeing more intense storms, greater rainfalls. When you look at what's happening with is it Sally right now in Louisiana? We're just seeing more impactful rain events across the country.
And John, if I could add and piggyback off of what Ms. Powell just stated, because she is exactly right. The storm in 2012 was 4 different storms over a longer period of time, and so the rainfall total may have been the same, but this storm was intense for a very, very short period of time with a very, very high rainfall, which makes it that 100-year type storm. So just 2 totally different types of storms occurred in 12 versus the one that we just had on September 10th.
Absolutely.
Andrew asks, can we get more specifics on the reimbursement program? How does one apply, qualify, and fill out the forms? Beyond that, what happens if the cost of the damages and subsequent payments for remodeling afterwards exceeds the amount given by the district?
And that this is a question about for the cleaning and sanitizing. So the scope of the services covered under that program is for immediate relief to basically remove any standing water and stabilize the property to make sure that it is safe. Anything beyond that would need to be turned in, and essentially a claim would need to be filed, and any receipts would need to be turned in. So that particular program does not cover loss of property or any restoration.
Ms. Madden asks, we will be taking advantage of the backwater valve rebate, thank you, but what can we do to support our senior neighbors with very limited incomes? Front loading the cost is not an option for them.
So I believe Mr. Gaddis just said this a moment ago, but we definitely want to make sure that we are able to assist our seniors and anyone else who may be vulnerable at this time and not able to front the costs of the cleanup or the backwater valve program. So the idea is that you contact the companies that will do the work and make sure that you're following the process which is laid out so that that contractor can be paid directly.
Is the pump station at First Street pumping the water to 4th and Rhode Island? Is that why we experienced that much flooding in Edgewood at a time when rain was barely coming down? Mr. Ray, I think we are going to toss that one.
Yeah, so it's pumping into that same system, but basically it doesn't go down that direction towards 4th and Rhode Island. It goes down toward Florida Avenue in that general direction. Again, basically there was that's a known flooding area in the 4th Street area, and we'll resolve that by 2023.
And this is a good question. Should we be concerned you're designing for a 15-year storm and we are already experiencing 100-year-like storms more regularly?
We're certainly thinking about that. At the treatment plant, Ms. Powell talked about the 225 million-gallon day pump station that we've constructed. We have the ability to expand that up to a 500 MGD facility, as well as expand our wet weather treatment facility as potential as a solution to address that. Also, Ms. Powell talked about green infrastructure that helps facilitate basically create Mother Nature in neighborhoods, more Mother Nature, more what we call bioretention areas and permeable pavement. That helps facilitate as well. So we've basically have put in safety factors on our tunnels, as well as our diversion sewers into the tunnel to add some additional capacity as well. So we've certainly thought about that. It's something that's been on our radar screen for a number of years. We think we have a plan of attack for it, and again, I think we're able to enlarge the receiving end of that, so we can pull more flow out of that if that does occur. We need to do that. We were thinking that might be a couple generations down the road here, but we want to go ahead and make sure it's have the ability to add basically like a tinker toy, so there are not restrictions with the shaft of adding additional pumps. It's already available there.
All right, thank you, Carlton. I will say that we have received a lot of questions. We are not going to be able to get to all of them tonight. We're respectful of everyone's time. We do appreciate you joining us this evening, and we will make sure that we will stay on and try to address the questions that you've asked in the chat, and at least give you contact information. But a lot of the information is on the webpage we set up for this, which is dcwater.com/September 10 flooding. Again, dcwater.com/September 10 flooding. And on that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gaddis for some final words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lyle and team. I really appreciate it. And one of the things we might be able to do with some of these questions that we did not get a chance to get to, if they're similar, we could add them to our frequently asked questions document that we have online as well. It might be something that we can do. Let me first of all thank everyone for joining us this evening. Again, I know this was a very, very tough storm for all of us, in an event for us to go through. I want to tell you that the DC Water Team Blue has been working around the clock to truly satisfy the residents and make sure that our infrastructure is operating to its highest capacity. And you know, our culture is one in which we want to be the best water and wastewater authority / utility in the country, if not in the world. So, and we pride ourselves on that. I personally want to thank all of our special guests that I talked to earlier, and our colleagues, you know, from HSEMA, from the mayor's office. We appreciate the relationship that we have with the mayor's office and the support of our mayor as well, of DC Water. It has been great to work with her and her team on this event. I want to thank the council members. Council McDuffie did attempt to join, but was not able to get through. So I do want to thank him for attempting to join as well. And thank Councilmember Todd's office and Ms. Turner for joining us as well.